Anyway, recap here. Makoto Kono is a tomboyish girl. In her final year of high school, almost all the students of her class are now ready to decide what they will do with their lives after school. But Makoto has no idea at all. She is and has always been a confused girl. In school she has three particularly close friends: Kosuke, whose father is a doctor and he too hopes to get into medical school one day; Yuri, who is Makoto's only girlfriend; and Chiaki, who transferred to the school only a couple months ago. Makoto hangs out with these three people during her free time, and that's almost all that she does. One very special day of July 13th, Makoto wakes up pretty late for school. This isn't something new for our clumsy Makoto. She races down from her room heading straight outside. Her mother stops her on her way and tells her to deliver some peaches to her aunt, who works at the art museum while returning from school. Makoto grumbles but agrees to do so. Her bike is a tad old and it's safe to say she is too lazy to keep it in its best condition, and as she rides downhill on it her brakes don't seem to work properly. She slams into the guardrail blocking the road for a train crossing. The day was only getting started. She gets in just in time to see that her teacher was not present at the class. Thinking it was her lucky day, she thanks her stars, but the teacher was late because he had prepared a surprise test for them. Obviously, Makoto does poorly, but the day gets worse. In her cooking class she ends up not only burning her tempura, but also burning the pan which she was cooking on. Oh, and it keeps getting worse. As she walks by minding her own business, a hooligan slams onto her and makes her fall. And to top it all off, her sister had eaten her lunch's dessert pudding. Later on, as Makoto delivers the school work of her class back to the science class, she hears some noise coming from the teacher's room and goes to check it out. When she looks around she sees that there is no one until she finally sees a shadow. She stumbles and falls and lands on a weird-looking walnut. And just like that she falls into a vast ocean, and then through the start of mankind, and through all sorts of weird stuff and back again to the very place where she had stumbled. She finds it weird and relates the incident to her friends after school, but they just laugh her off. After playing a bit of catch, Makoto heads to her aunt and races her bike down the same hill. She woozes past a fat woman at high speed. Now if this was any other day it might have been different, but today was a really unlucky day for her. Her brakes don't work. As the train arrives at the crossing behind the guardrails she slams onto them. She is taken off her bike by the impact, and she heading straight for the train. Realizing that she was about to die, Makoto wishes that if she knew this day would be like this, she would have woken up early, done a bit better in her exams and perhaps spent some time with her friends. She closes her eyes waiting for her death, but as she opens her eyes, she finds herself well behind the train guardrails. Astounded, confused and scared, she rushes to her aunt and explains the whole ordeal to her. She is not amazed at all. She thinks it's casual. Guess that's why they call her Aunt Witch all the time. She tells her that this event is called a time leap. She had done it once when she was young too. It's nothing strange. Makoto just needs to find out how she did it and she could even do it again and again. This idea sticks to Makoto's mind, who goes home and tries to figure out how she had time leapt earlier. She tries jumping from one bed to another which does not work. She tries jumping from the window, but her sister stops her. She thinks Makoto is committing the unthinkable because she ate her pudding. Makoto goes to a nearby riverside telling herself that it must just be a dream. She couldn't possibly travel through time. It couldn't be true. She gets up ready to leave but runs back and jumps from the river banks. And suddenly, she reaches back one day ago. She goes to check that her pudding was intact. She had in fact time traveled, her trigger being a large jumper leap. She leaps one more time back to her unluckiest day, and this time she does all the things she thought she would do when she had almost died, knowing the future events which will transpire. She stays in this timeline but this time making sure everything goes according to her plan. She wakes up early and gets to school on time, and gets a perfect score on her surprise test. She manages to switch places with her friend Tasaki in cooking class, so that he gets into the accident instead. She was hoping it wouldn't happen altogether, but it was fine as long as it didn't happen to her. She manages to avoid the hooligans gracefully as well, and to top it all off convinces her friends to go to karaoke after their baseball game. She leaps 5 more times during karaoke to make the session as long as possible. The next few days go by with great enjoyment for Makoto, who boasts to her aunt how nothing can go wrong with her life now, and even if something goes bad she can just time leap and fix everything up. Her aunt warns her that if she is enjoying it, someone must be suffering in her place, which sounds unreasonable to Makoto, who brushes it off. But soon, things start getting a bit out of hand. It all starts the day when one of the juniors of the school, Kaho, comes up to Kosuke to ask if he is dating Makoto, and she asks him out on a date. Kosuke catches up with his friends and relates how he had rejected her. This makes Chiaki wonder what would happen to the group if one of them started dating, and while returning home with Makoto bluntly he asks her out. Makoto hasn't really thought of him as anything else than a friend ever. so she time leaps hoping he would not bring up this point again. But Chiaki seems adamant on asking her out. She uses her time leap one more time and avoids him instead to get rid of the question. The next few days she continues to avoid the boy until she realizes that Yuri has a crush on him. Lately Tasaki was being bullied by some boys for ruining cooking class by causing a fire, so he decides to get back at them one day. As he is blasting them with a fire extinguisher, wonder where the teachers are. By the way, Makoto notices him and realizes that it was because of her that he had gotten to this situation, unfortunately for her. Tasaki also realizes that Makoto was the one who had put her in that place, and throws the huge fire extinguisher at her. Chiaki comes in time to stop it from hitting her and hurts himself instead, not wanting him to get hurt. Makoto time leaps and pushes him aside. The fire extinguisher hits Yuri instead. She has to be taken to the school nurse. The whole situation brings Chiaki and Yuri close, and they start dating. Later that day, as Makoto is taking a bath, she is pretty pissed at Chiaki at how quickly he had changed his mind after confessing to her just days before. She suddenly realizes that there is a strange numbered tattoo on the back side of her arm. It says 96. She doesn't give much attention to it, since Chiaki was now dating and the group was now only her and Kosuke. Makoto has a lot of time in her hands. She decides to go to her aunt one day and she shows Makoto a painting. The painting is a strange one, in that they don't know if it is of any value or was even made by anyone special, but they know that it's old and from a time of war and famine. But it doesn't have any symbolic meaning. They don't know who made it and what it represents. It is a still image of nothingness. Over the next few days, Makoto goes back and forth in time trying to fix some of the things that she had made go wrong. While doing so, Makoto realizes that the tattoo on her arm was actually a counter, which counted down the number of times she had leapt, and she figures out that once it reaches 0 it's all done for. Her time leaping is over. With her last 2 leaps remaining, Makoto leaps back to the very first day, to figure out who was in the science lab before her, who it was that she saw. She goes there and finds that it wasn't anyone at all. It was in fact her hallucination. Just then she gets a text from Kosuke, who tells her that he is taking Kaho on her bike to his father's hospital, who had injured her legs after her accident with the hooligans earlier. Makoto's eyes widen. She remembers that the bike's brakes won't work today, and Kosuke would get into that accident which she got in, the one that was supposed to have killed her. She rushes out of school, calling him all the way, while hoping nothing had happened. When she reaches the scene, Kosuke hadn't arrived there. He must have taken a different way. Makoto breathes a sigh of relief, and gives a call to Chiaki to ask if he knew where Kosuke was. Chiaki picks up and tells her that Kosuke went home, and then asks Makoto one question: "Are you time leaping?" Makoto gets flustered. She doesn't want to answer this question and she decides to use her last leap to make sure that Chiaki didn't ask it again. Just as her last leap is done, Kosuke and Kohu pass by on her bike down the same hill. The train comes on the tracks and the bike strikes the guardrails. A frantically racing Makoto is unable to stop her friends from the fate they were destined to. The couple on the bike fly towards the train, but suddenly time stops. Someone else had time leaped. It was Chiaki. He comes to her as the world around them freezes. He tells her that he was from the future. A future where time travel was made possible. He come to see the painting that her aunt had shown her earlier, and had planned to return to his original timeline afterward, but as the time flew by, he realized it was so much fun staying alongside them. He had almost used up all his time leaps as well and had used this final one to save Kosuke, his source of extra leaps. The walnut had somehow been misplaced and landed on Makoto, who had used that power for now. He tells her that the future is terrible, and wanted to spend some more time with them. But now that he had broken the rules by telling the people of the past about time travel, he would evaporate the next day, a punishment for breaking the rules and staying in the past. Makoto cannot hold back her tears, but there is nothing she can do. Chiaki just disappears. He doesn't even show up the next day in class. Makoto knows that he is gone for good. As she sulks all day trying to come to terms with what had happened, she realizes that she had one time leap left. Earlier Chiaki had time leapt her back to the point where her time leap count was still 1. She uses this time leap to go back in time to the very first day, July 13th, and recovers the used-up walnut from the science lab. She confronts Kosuke and tells him not to use her bike, and then rushes to where Chiaki is. She tells him everything that has happened, and tells him that he should go back to the future while he has his one leap left. She tells him that she will make sure that the future is not terrible, and promises that she will take care of the art and culture, and make sure it remains for them to witness in the future. With that promise the two embrace, and even with a heavy heart Makoto bids her friend farewell. With a smile, and some tears, her life goes back to normal, but now she was more confident in herself, and one thing for sure, she now knew what to do with her life. She would be an art preserver just like her aunt, to save ancient art for generations to witness and thus fulfill her promise to Chiaki. As always, if you like what you see, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.